By now you can tell that prescribed grazing may require changes to the structure and layout of your farm. But don't think these changes all need to happen at once.
You've got to be a long-range planner. And as most anything in life is worth, you get out of it what you put into it. You want to have a meticulous plan and follow that plan. Then with a lot of help like from NRCS and a lot of the university extension services, you can create a system and a process, program that can be very productive. So you really have to be looking ahead and be willing to be patient and wait on the results.
As you begin to think about structuring your pastures for prescribed grazing, keep this in mind. Your goal is to take advantage of the landscape of your farm to maximize your forage production. Your farm's landscape includes 3 factors: the slope of the land, the direction the land faces, called the aspect, and the type of soil on the land. The amount of forage a paddock produces depends on all 3 factors. You should strive to create paddocks that don't vary much in terms of soil type, slope, and forage type. Ideally, you want to aim for paddocks that will all produce roughly the same amount of forage. Remember, 2 paddocks that are the same size may not produce the same amount of forage because of differences in landscape, soil fertility, and forage plants. Your farm may have surface water that needs to be fenced off from animals. Keep in mind that after you create small paddocks, your animals will no longer be able to depend on surface water. Each paddock will need to provide access to livestock watering facilities. These can be placed in fence lines to serve more than one paddock.
Having tanks and paddocks to graze them to doing management intensive grazing was just a natural progression, really. Once you started controlling where the cattle were watering, you were controlling where they were grazing, and you begin to see all kinds of things like nutrient recycle and improved forage, and it all just starts to working together once you set up the water tanks.
Be sure that the placement of your livestock watering facilities takes into account the future location of your fences and paddocks. Water availability is a driving factor in the layout of your farm for prescribed grazing, because moving fences is easier than moving watering facilities. Not all fences need to be permanent. Today's electric polywire fence systems make it both easy and inexpensive for you to control animal movement for prescribed grazing. Electric fences create an effective psychological barrier for your animals. They make it easy to change the layout of your paddocks when your grazing needs change. Temporary fences can also be removed for mowing, haying, and spreading fertilizer. What are called sacrifice areas also need to be considered.
Well, in wet weather with a forked foot like a cow has, they're going to damage the root system. So you want to minimize that if you can. If you have that sacrifice area, you're going to have to plan ahead, which means to give it a time to recover later on.
Shade areas, watering facilities, and mineral feeders should be kept apart. This encourages your animals to move across the entire paddock. The more time an animal spends loafing in the shade, the less time it spends eating and putting on weight. Encouraging animals to use the whole pasture will mean fewer bare spots, more even grazing, and better distribution of manure and urine. Remember, your transition to prescribed grazing can be a gradual one. The NRCS will help you develop a plan that takes your individual needs into account. Get in touch with an NRCS representative today. The Natural Resources Conservation Service, helping people help the land.